From Superman to Silenced, How Hollywood Backstabbed Henry Cavill. Prologue: The Rise of a Man of Steel. It wasn't just another casting announcement. When Henry Cavill first stepped into the iconic red and blue suit in Man of Steel 2013, audiences felt something they hadn't in years: a Superman who could make you believe in hope again. Cavill was broad-shouldered, chiseled, and carried himself with the kind of old-fashioned heroism that didn't feel manufactured. He was powerful without arrogance, vulnerable without weakness. His debut film presented Superman as a conflicted figure, an alien struggling to find his place in a flawed world. And Cavill delivered that complexity with quiet strength. For many, this wasn't just a role he played, it was as if he had been born to wear the cape. Then came Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice 2016, and Justice League 2017. While the films themselves received mixed reactions, one thing was universally agreed upon: Henry Cavill was Superman. Fans defended him fiercely online, declaring that his screen presence, physique, and sincerity made him one of the best actors to ever embody the character. Even critics who disliked the films admitted Cavill had the charisma and gravitas needed for the part. And then, after years of uncertainty about the future of the DC Universe, something happened that reignited hope. The comeback announced, then snatched away. October 2022. After years of rumors, half-truths, and silence from Warner Bros., Henry Cavill appeared in the mid-credits scene of Black Adam, smiling in that familiar cape, saying just 7 words that broke the internet: "We should talk." For fans, it was more than a cameo. It was a promise. Cavill then took to social media to make it official. "I am back as Superman." The internet erupted in celebration. Hashtags trended worldwide. Reaction videos flooded YouTube. Memes painted Cavill as the real Superman returning to save not just Metropolis, but the DC film franchise itself. It was, for a brief moment, the perfect comeback story. But in Hollywood, perfection doesn't last long. Just 2 months later, the dream came crashing down. Warner Bros. Announced that James Gunn and Peter Safran had been appointed to lead the newly rebranded DC Studios. Their mission: rebuild the DC Universe from the ground up. And that meant starting with a brand new Superman, one younger, one from a completely reimagined story. Henry Cavill's return was over before it had even begun. Chaos behind the curtain. From the outside, the decision seemed sudden and cruel. But behind the scenes, the situation was messier than most people realized. When James Gunn stepped into his new role, Cavill's Superman return had already been announced. Gunn has admitted in interviews that when he saw the headlines, he thought, "What is going on?" Cavill had no signed contract, just a verbal agreement. The cameo in Black Adam had been filmed before Gunn and Safran took control, meaning the studio had essentially promised the fans something without telling the new bosses. For Gunn, it wasn't personal, it was logistical. His creative plan required starting over, introducing a younger Clark Kent in a film that would focus on the hero's early days in Metropolis. That version of Superman couldn't be played by Cavill without rewriting the entire foundation of the new DC Universe. Still, even Gunn admitted the way it happened was unfair and a total bummer. The decision was not framed as a firing, but rather as a necessary reset. Gunn even suggested that Cavill might one day play another role in the DC Universe, just not Superman. It was a corporate explanation, but for fans, it didn't soften the blow. The fan base cheers and chaffs. The internet turned into a battlefield overnight. Some fans tried to be optimistic, wishing luck to the incoming Superman actor, David Corenswet. But the overwhelming sentiment was outrage. "Bring back Henry Cavill" trended on Twitter for days. Instagram fan pages posted side-by-side comparisons of Cavill in the suit versus concept art of Corenswet. YouTube channels dissected the situation in hour-long videos, calling it one of Hollywood's biggest mistakes. One viral tweet summed it up: "I wish David Corenswet the best of luck, but for me, Superman is and always will be Henry Cavill." What made it sting even more was that Cavill had reportedly left Netflix's The Witcher partly because of scheduling conflicts with his Superman return. Fans felt robbed, not just of another Superman film, but of Cavill's dedication to the role. He had reshaped his career in anticipation of it, only to be discarded. Tabloids called it a humiliating reversal. Reddit threads labeled it the ultimate betrayal. Even people who weren't particularly invested in the DC universe felt sympathy for the actor who had carried himself with so much dignity, only to be sidelined by corporate restructuring. Hollywood's dark mirror, the bet race. For those who've watched the industry long enough, Cavill's story wasn't new, it was just painfully public. Hollywood has a long history of backroom deals, sudden script changes, and recasts that leave actors blindsided. But Cavill's case felt especially ruthless because of the way the studio dangled the role in front of him, used his image to boost fan interest, and then tossed him aside when the corporate vision shifted. Some insiders speculated that Cavill's public announcement of his return had been a strategic move by the old Warner Brothers regime, an attempt to rally fans and pressure the incoming leadership. If true, that would mean Cavill was being used as a pawn in a larger corporate power struggle. To fans, it looked like a man who had given his all to a role being sacrificed on the altar of creative direction. And unlike the comic book Superman, who always finds a way to save the day, this was a battle Cavill couldn't win. The silent backlash. The decision may have been framed as moving forward creatively, but the backlash didn't fade. It simmered. Memes popped up portraying Cavill as a Superman cast adrift, looking down from the clouds at a DC universe he once saved. Fan edits resurfaced, showing how perfectly he fit the role. Even years-old clips from Man of Steel started trending again, as fans reshared their favorite Superman moments in protest. Some fans even joked about the Superman curse, the belief that bad luck seems to follow actors who play the role. Others weren't joking. They saw Cavill's departure as another example of how major studios undervalue the very actors who help define their biggest franchises. The irony was brutal. For years, Cavill had been criticized for not having enough screen time in ensemble films like Justice League. Now that he was finally poised to get the solo spotlight again, the role had been stripped away. Cavill moves on with pride, not resentment. But Henry Cavill is not a man to dwell in bitterness. Publicly, he thanked the fans for their support and expressed gratitude for the opportunity to play Superman at all. There was no angry outburst, no scorched earth interview. He handled his exit with the same quiet dignity he had brought to the role. And he moved forward, fast. He signed on to star in the highly anticipated Highlander reboot, playing the immortal Connor MacLeod under the direction of Chad Stahelski, the filmmaker behind the John Wick series. Filming is expected to begin soon, with Cavill describing it as one of the most challenging and rewarding projects of his career. He also secured a deal with Amazon Studios to adapt and star in the Warhammer 40,000 franchise, a passion project for him given his lifelong love of the game's universe. For Cavill, these new roles aren't just work, they're opportunities to dive into worlds he genuinely cares about. In a way, he's proving a truth that Hollywood often forgets. Sometimes losing a role opens the door to something even greater. Epilogue. What Hollywood lost, what fans still carry. Henry Cavill's Superman wasn't perfect. No cinematic incarnation of the character ever will be. But it was his, and it connected with people in a way that can't be replaced by a clean corporate reboot. Hollywood lost more than an actor when they let him go. They lost the goodwill of a massive, loyal fan base. They lost the continuity of a portrayal that could have anchored the franchise for another decade. For fans, Cavill will always be the Superman who could have been. The one who embodied hope, justice, and quiet strength in a time when superhero films were becoming noisy, cynical, and overcrowded. The one who, even after being cast aside, carried himself like the hero they knew him to be. And maybe that's why, no matter how many reboots DC Studios rolls out, the cry will always echo online. Once Superman, always Superman. Because while Hollywood may have tried to silence him, Henry Cavill's legacy as the Man of Steel will live on, burning brighter than any cape they can hang in a studio wardrobe. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you.